Moving on now, and just because you live in a small community doesn't mean your voice can't be heard. Each year, the Nebraska Rural Poll is conducted to ensure state lawmakers know what's on the minds of rural Nebraskans. The surveys have been sent out for over 2 decades and provide insight into trends and changes that are happening in the state's smaller areas. UNL Ag economist Dr. Brad Lubben joined me to give some background info on the poll and share some results from this year.
The Rural Poll is a long-running survey of rural Nebraskans outside of the metro areas, Lincoln and Omaha, and it's a survey that has historically given us a perspective of what's important, what Nebraskans think, and what issues are on the horizon that we might focus on in terms of policy questions or economic and community development questions, but it gives us a snapshot of where Nebraska is. We ask some questions on an annual basis: sense of community well-being, individual well-being. It gives us a barometer of how well the state is doing, how well rural Nebraskans feel from year to year. And then we also ask focus questions. Take a particular issue. This year we asked some questions about economic development and activity. We asked some questions about opioid abuse with the national attention and with the ongoing concerns of addressing that problem. It was an appropriate time to ask how substantial, how intense, or how significant was that issue across the state.
Speaking in a general sense, what were some of the findings and maybe even what you and the team found particularly interesting or particularly surprising in the findings?
You know, what we tend to find, conditions are still typically optimistic for the future. Those do wax and wane with the economy, maybe the general Nebraska economy or particularly the Nebraska ag economy, so you could expect some correlation, relationship between current economic conditions and the outlook. But individuals generally have an outlook, positive outlook, and they see opportunities for the future. That does vary across the state and across regions, across communities. Some communities are struggling more than others in terms of what they can provide to their residents or what their future prospects are. One of those stories that seems to show up time and time again, rural communities might struggle to offer the latest services or to keep up with the demand for quality services, whether it's housing and infrastructure or broadband connectivity or retail shopping and the like. And yet some of those same rural communities are the most socially knit and closely tied or closely knit communities out there.
Yeah, and one thing I found interesting, you do, one of the questions is about optimism, and found that Nebraskans in the Panhandle part of the state less optimistic. And I know you touched on that a little bit as far as maybe some of the offerings that are in certain rural parts of the state. But why do you think that is? They were less optimistic in the Panhandle.
You know, so it showed up in this year's results that the Panhandle did trail the state in terms of optimism. But if you think of the state in total, the rural part of the state in total certainly sees the current ag economy, and that's one sort of red flag to be concerned about. The Panhandle, unfortunately, is also dealing with the repercussions of the merger or the sale of Cabela's and the local economic impact in terms of jobs and economic activity right there in Sidney, as well as the broader commuting area. Those are two very big drivers in the Panhandle.
So now that you have the results, what do you want to do with them?
It helps to inform educational efforts. It helps to inform policy decisions. It helps to identify potential areas for future study and further research. It's also time to begin anew and look at next year's survey. This survey goes out every year in March or April. We're in that stage now of wrapping up this year's reports and posing questions to our stakeholders about the kinds of issues and kinds of questions to ask next year. So we'll be working on that for a few months here and trying to roll out the 2019 survey next spring.